Malka, Packer-Monroe. I actually know like half of you, if not more. So it's so exciting to see everyone because I know you from different parts of my life. So that's pretty cool. Actually, no, one of my old 5th graders signed up. I hope that she joins too because I haven't seen her in 20 years. But this is very fun. So I'm the director of 18Doors here in Atlanta, where it's sunny and beautiful out today. I'm very grateful that we're still allowed to go for walks as far as movement goes. We can't do much more than that these days here, but we can definitely connect on Zoom. So I'm very excited about this. So today we are just going to go over the basics of what belongs on a Passover Seder plate and the 15 steps to a Passover Seder. Hopefully everyone received my email today that had the guide that we're going to be using for today. We're not going to go over every piece of that guide, so everyone has a copy of that you can use and read on your own. We're just going to go through the basics, and then at the end we'll have an opportunity for questions. If during you just have a quick question here and there, we definitely can answer those. If you want to save your bigger questions to the end, feel free to write those down, and then we'll have an opportunity for those. Trying to think of what else I want to say. Oh, and also I'm going to start my share screen. Hold on one second. So this is what the booklet looks like, the guide that has been created and played with over the years. So everyone should have received a copy of this. If not, we can email that to you, but I'm going to share screen the whole time so you can see what it looks like. So that's the front cover. Oh, there we go. So the first page is just explaining about Passover. Here's a blessing for people of many backgrounds who journey with us. You guys can read that on your own. We're going to go through these different parts of the Seder so you can see what they are. And the nice thing about this page is as you're preparing for the Seder, you can use this as a little checklist. Here's a page. Again, we're not going to go over everything. We just don't have enough time. And I don't think people want to be on Zoom for more than an hour after. I know many of us are on Zoom calls a lot during the day. So here's some information about preparing for Passover as far as foods and cleaning our homes. And other resources we have on here. We have a lot of resources on our website, 18doors.org. So we have lots of Haggadah options. There are more and more digital versions of Haggadahs because as we all know, it's much harder to acquire things. Amazon's going a little slower and we don't always want to use Amazon, and bookstores are having a challenge. So there are some digital Haggadahs that you can look at here and other digital resources. There's also hard copy resources, so different how-to guides and other Haggadahs that we really like. When I lead this workshop in person, I have a huge bin, like this huge plastic bin of all the Haggadot is the Hebrew plural of Haggadah. I have a huge bin of them, like for Jew-boos, like Jewish Buddhists, or for people who are agnostic, or for people who want something artsy and creative, or, you know, there's so many different kinds. So here's just a list of a few, but if you have questions of a different Haggadah that you're looking for, we can definitely help you with that. And I'll let Robyn introduce herself before we go into the Seder plate.
So hi, so I'm Rabbi Robyn Frisch. I'm the director of 18Doors' Rukin Rabbinic Fellowship Program, and I'm really excited to do this webinar with Malka. So I'll just add a couple things. One is just to be really clear up front, this is not a webinar about how to do a Zoom Seder. There are lots of them out there. We are happy to point you to some of them or offer you advice if you want to talk afterwards. You know, I'd be glad to do so, but we won't be specifically doing that. We'll be talking, as Malka said, about the Seder plate, about the different elements of the Seder. And then two things that I read today in different, you know, as you can imagine as a Jewish professional, reading constantly about Seders and how people are dealing with Seders this year, two really struck me. One was, think about what you're going to wear. Like, there's no right or wrong, but do you want it to be a fancy Seder where you get all dressed up like you probably typically do? Or do you want this to be just a really casual year where you just show up in your sweats? And what's right for you and whoever, it might just be you at your Seder this year, but for you and maybe the 2 other 3 people you're with, something to think about in advance. And the other thing is, this is true always, but especially this year, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going to necessarily be able to get every element on your Seder plate that you need to have. You might need substitutions. I heard one person who said if you can't get any of the things or even the typical substitutions, just draw it. You know, you can't get an egg and you can't get something else, draw an egg and put that on the Seder plate. Be creative, do your best. It doesn't have to be perfect. Hopefully have fun with it, have it be rewarding and meaningful, and then call it a night when you're ready. And it's just, as we all know all too well, it's a really, really weird year. And don't be hard on yourself about a Seder. So I'm going to turn it back over to Malka.
Sure. And one thing to add to that, I have friends who are Jewish, and they call it Fancy Fridays. Every Friday, all four of them, like it's 2 parents and 2 kids, they dress up every Friday for Shabbat, even though they're not going anywhere. They call it Fancy Fridays, right? Because I think that's a huge challenge of this time, is that every day feels kind of like the same. You know, Robyn and I were talking about this beforehand, like what are people wearing on a daily basis? And on Zoom calls, so many people are not wearing, you know, anything fancy from like here down. And how do we make things feel special or unique so it doesn't feel like the movie Groundhog's Day where every day feels like the same? So I think it is important to figure out, you know, what do you need to do to make Passover feel special this year? You know, even part of me feels like, do I have to get out the Passover plate? It's like all the way in the attic, but you know, I could use a regular plate. That is definitely an option, but there's something nice about that special plate that's specifically for this holiday. So speaking of my Passover plate, I actually have a few, and one of them is in this picture. So this is my Passover plate from a picture of it from several years ago that has a lot of the elements that we'll be talking about today. So the first element is the beitzah, which is the roasted egg. And there are, in Judaism, many interpretations for so many things, including the parts of the Seder plate, but it's this idea that it's reminding us of the sacrifice because it's roasted, but also represents spring and newness, renewal. Something that we did in our family is, my wife is not Jewish, and she and I, with our nephew on her side of the family, dyed Easter eggs that year. And then a couple days later, used that Easter egg on our Passover Seder plate because it was a hard-boiled egg. It was beautiful. You can see it in the bottom right-hand corner. It's that bluish green color. So there's different ways that we can be creative with the Passover Seder plate. So for the beitzah, it could be an Easter egg that was dyed. If you can't find an Easter egg on here, there are substitutions for all the parts of the Seder plate. So it could be, you know, another thing that represents fertility and growth. So it could be seeds, it could be an avocado, it could be a pit. I like this idea of it could even be a flower, which I know it's harder to get flowers these days, but I know for me, if you just go out to the front yard, there are a lot of weeds that look like flowers. So, you know, grab a pretty flower and stick it on your Seder plate. Another part of the Seder plate is roah, which is the lamb bone, which also represents the sacrificial lamb. For some people, buying a lamb bone or acquiring one, and you can get it for free at the grocery store, can be kind of gross. I know the first year I bought one myself and roasted it in the oven, I was like, wow, that smell is so disgusting. So for me, it was like not what I wanted. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan. It's just not what I preferred. And so the following year I used a beet because it represents the blood, that same color. And then since then I've used a yam to represent the Paschal yam. So kind of a play on words with the Paschal lamb. So there's, again, different ways that you can be creative with the different parts of the Seder plate. It also can represent the outstretched arm. So if you have other ideas of what can represent that, the outstretched arm of God, right? So how do you represent higher power on your plate? So there's different ways to be creative with this.
And then one of the next things on the Seder plate is the maror, or bitter herbs. And that's probably one of the ones that more people are familiar with. And it reminds us of the bitterness of our slavery. So most people for that use either like the actual horseradish, the white horseradish, or you can get it in little jars. I've been seeing it a lot, not that I've been at grocery stores, so I should say. The one time I was at the grocery store, I saw a lot of it, and it was, so at least in Philly, it seems like something that you can get your hands on pretty easily.
Yeah,
although again,
selling out.
you might not be going out, you might not have access to it. You know, there are a list here of other things that you could possibly use. And if you can't get any of them, be creative. Then the next element is karpas, or the green vegetables. And the green vegetables remind us of spring and rebirth and renewal. And typically, most of us who've used that over the years are used to seeing parsley used for the karpas.
So the next item on the Seder plate, I'll admit, when I was growing up, we had no idea what this was. I went to a Jewish day school, and we had our Seder plate at home, and we're like, what's this last spot for? So it's for Charoset. It's not talked about as much for some reason, but it's just another bitter herb. So you could use a piece of romaine lettuce, or, you know, anything that you would use for maror. But yeah, it's definitely one that, like, I've seen people skip it on their plates or put their orange there. Different ways to play around with that one. Oh, here we go. The next item is Charoset. So as some of you may know, Ben & Jerry's made Charoset ice cream, which I never got to try, but I'm so curious what that would be like. But Charoset is a delicious apple and nut mixture. There are many different recipes, and in this booklet you'll see we have an Ashkenazi one, we have a Sephardi one, we have a tropical one, a Persian style one, a Tex-Mex one. So there's different ways that you can make it. If you go online, you can find many, many different recipes. I think the cool thing with Charoset is the idea is that it's representing the bricks and mortar of the pyramids that were being built as slaves, but you can be very creative with the different kinds of recipes, especially for interfaith families. If you want to represent someone's cultural background, you can try to find a recipe that represents that. And then this next page, I think, is really interesting. There are a lot of items that people have been adding over the years. There aren't necessarily spots on the Seder plate for these, so you can kind of add it on. As you can see on my Seder plate here, I just kind of had these like little dishes on the Seder plate that kind of added to the other dishes. So people use olives to represent world peace, fair trade chocolate to talk about forced labor. There's an idea of using an artichoke to represent the interfaith community, part of the Jewish community. Ruth's mix also can represent the interfaith community. And then the orange is one that I think a lot of people know about. I grew up with the orange. I grew up with the story, and I wrote a whole article on it you can read on your own about how I thought the orange represented feminism. But the story I'd heard was actually a myth. The actual story was that well, you can read the story because I want to give us time to get to everything, right? But basically that it represents the LGBT community, but now in practice, I think for a lot of people, the orange represents marginalized communities. So.
And I'll just add to that, I've heard people discussing this year, like what can we put on our Seder plate, you know, this year of the coronavirus? Like it feels like a year that's worthy of its own item. So I did read an article this morning about a rabbi suggesting putting a spoon on the plate, and representing people who are in need of food, who might not have enough to eat. People are concerned in different ways. And I honestly don't remember all the different reasons they said a spoon, but that was just one possible suggestion. If you want to get creative this year and just acknowledge, again, the unique, the weight of how different this year is. So now Malka's given us a page with other things that we use at the Seder. And again, I want to point out, you don't have to have all of them, you know, especially here, you can't necessarily go to a Judaica store and pick them up or even get them in the mail at this point. If you have a matzah holder, that's fantastic. If you don't, just put the matzah on the plate, you know, put the matzah on a plate, cover it with a napkin. There's an Elijah's cup and a Miriam's cup, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Again, it's lovely if you have one or both like actual special Kiddush cups that are for Elijah and Miriam, or just special Kiddush cups that you have, but if not, any glass will do. Sometimes people, and we'll talk about this a little later too, it's traditional to lean to the left. And as it says there, that's not a political statement, just, although it could be, but it's traditional to lean, and it happens to be to the left. So when I grew up, it was always my grandfather was at the head, and he had the big pillow at his seat, and that was it. But now a lot of people put pillows at everyone's seat. An afikoman holder for when you hide the afikoman, which we'll talk about. And then finally, this is important, salt water, because you dip the karpas in the salt water, but you just need a bowl and salt.
Right. And so again, like for all these items, you can have regular stuff around the house, or you can buy fancy things, you can make things, you can be super creative. Right. And again, we have some miscellaneous information, and we have this checklist of all the things for your table. So after we showed you everything, now we have this checklist that you can just make sure you have all the things that you want. Okay, so candles. So that's the first thing that we do is we light candles before most Jewish rituals. To begin, we light candles to separate that time of mundane to the time of holiness. So again, our lives are feeling much more mundane than they used to because there aren't as many special occasions like weddings and life cycle events and things to go to. So I think it's especially important this year to have that moment of quiet, to really pause and take that time to light candles, say the blessing. If it's on a Friday night, which it's not this year, you add for Shabbat. But taking that time to light candles, take a breath, get grounded, say the blessing together as a community. And again, like you can have fancy candle holders, or you can have like 2 little tea lights or 2 birthday candles stuck into something, you know, like there's so many ways that you can be creative with this.
And so after we light the candles, we actually get to the very first element of the Seder. Because some of you may know the song Kadesh or Chatz, like the 15 elements of the Seder. The first one is Kadesh, or the Kiddush, the blessing over the wine, which we actually do 4 times throughout the Passover Seder. And you may know already, if not, you will definitely hear it. The number 4 come up a lot. It's a significant number in relation to the Seder, and that is because God makes 4 promises to redeem the Israelites from slavery in Egypt in the Bible. So these 4 cups of wine each represent one of those promises that God makes. So the first cup, we say the blessing over the wine together, which is here. It's in this particular Haggadah that we have here in front of us right now. The blessing over the wine is the shortened version, which just Berei Pri Hagafen. There is an actual longer version. So depending on what Haggadah you're using or what tradition you're comfortable with, you may do the whole long version of the Kiddush, or you may just decide to do the shorter version of the Kiddush. And, you know, as we keep saying, if you have a Kiddush cup, great. If not, use a glass wine. You can use grape juice, whatever you have available. Recite the blessing over the wine, lean to the left, take a sip. And this leaning to the left, by the way, comes from this idea that people who were slaves didn't have the luxury to relax while they were eating, but free people, which we are now, have the luxury to relax and to lean and to enjoy. So basically, say the blessing over the wine, however you choose to say the blessing, and then take a moment to really enjoy the wine.
There we go. The next blessing is the Shehechianu, which is a blessing we also say at many Jewish rituals and life cycle events, thanking the source of life or God for bringing us to this moment at this time. The next ritual is Orchatz, which is a ritual hand washing. So there are 2 times we wash our hands during the Passover Seder. The first time is right before we start eating snacks. And when you eat a snack, you don't say a blessing when you wash your hands. So this is literally just washing your hands. There are many ways you can wash your hands. You can either have one person wash their hands on behalf of everyone else at the ceremony. You can have each person take turns washing their own hands virtually. It could just be like, everyone wash your hands, now come back to the computer. And if you have people in person, at least a couple of people, you can wash your neighbor's hands and just make sure you have a towel at the end.
And I think also this year I've been thinking a lot and hearing a lot about the orchatz, the washing,
yes,
because we're all constantly washing. Like I don't even know how many times in a day. I'm scared to think about it. And just that this is a very different washing, and this is a ritual washing, and it's not about getting your hands clean, and you're not using soap. It almost feels like a relaxing washing. What's that?
Or Purell.
Like it's a non-obsessive washing, which is kind of nice because that to me distinguishes it from every other washing I'm doing all day. But we do wash, and then we get to the karpas, which is still the green vegetable, and we dip it in the salt water, which represents the tears that the Israelites cried when they were slaves in Egypt. And one of my favorite things always about dipping the karpas into the salt water was that after we've done that and we say a blessing for that, which the blessing is on this page, we say the blessing for God, praising God who is the creator of the fruit of the earth. So we haven't said the motzi, the blessing for bread, so we can't eat everything now, but at this point we can eat certain things. So like at my Seder, after this, we always have crudité. Like we've said the blessing to cover vegetables. We tend to have a longer Seder in my family, so since it's going to be longer, it's going to be a while till we get to eat. So that at least kind of kept everyone from complaining that they were starving because they were able to eat crudité, and we were able to pass that around the table once we said that blessing.
So the next element is yachatz. This is when we break the middle matzah, and we take that piece that we broke off and we hide that for the afikomen. So a lot of ideas around the afikomen, that it's like the dessert, but also this is a nice way to keep the kids at the Passover Seder intrigued, that you hide it at this time, and then they have something to look forward to looking for. And there's also fancy matzah covers that have places for 3 matzahs for this, so that you can take out the middle one, or you can just use 3 napkins, which is what we did growing up.
Then we get to the main section of the Haggadah, which is the telling. And it's the telling of the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And there are different elements to that. The idea, though, is that on Passover, we're obligated to tell the story of the Israelites being freed from slavery. And by telling that story, we remember and we celebrate it. So the central parts of the telling include the 4 questions, the 4 children, the 10 plagues, and Dayenu. And then finally, we drink the 2nd cup of wine. So with the 4 questions, they are traditionally asked, depending on who knows them, traditionally by the youngest child in the room if they know it, or the youngest person in the room who's able to say it, or sometimes if you have a lot of people at your Seder, which hopefully none of you will have this year, but if you happen to have a lot of kids at a Seder and they all know it, then they might all the kids might say it. This year, depending on who you're with, if you're with a few people, you still could have the youngest who knows it say it, or you could say it together. But we ask, why is this night different from all other nights? And there are some other questions, and it's always struck me as funny that we then don't answer those questions right away, but they're part of the bigger picture of the Passover Seder. So if you're actually waiting to hear the answer right away, you're not going to hear it right away. And then we have this section about the 4 children, and each of the
I want to throw in one quick thing, because I didn't put it in here because I thought it was very cute. So I saw someone post the 2020s version of the 4 questions, which is, can you hear me? Can you see me? Is your video on? And can you mute? Referring to all of our many, many Zoom calls. So sorry, I just had to throw that in.
No, that's great. Then we get to the 4 children, and each child, like today, learns differently. And it tells us that we have to be able to speak really, and there's so many lessons about education in this, but we have to be able to really speak to the children in their language and be able to explain it to them each in a different way. And we respond to each of the 4 children differently. And actually, Malka, if you don't mind going to page 23, Malka included in here a really great reading about the 4 children and COVID-19, which is obviously not part of the traditional Haggadah, but a really nice thing if you want to include this year. Again, making it a little modern and taking some of the themes and issues of the traditional Seder and bringing them up to our day.
And the cool thing with a lot of different Haggadot is there are so many different kinds that, traditionally it's the 4 sons, but in other places it's the 4 children. There's different understandings of the 4 children. So it's just neat to see how different people interpret it in the different Haggadot.
And similarly, the 10 plagues. We have the traditional 10 plagues, which the idea being that even though the Israelites were freed from slavery, there was a lot of suffering on the part of all the Egyptian people. And so we want to remember their suffering. And so we name each of these plagues that God brought upon the Egyptians. And as you say, each plague, different families have different traditions. Sometimes, like I always grew up, we dipped our finger in the cup, and then you dip your finger onto the plate for each of the 10 plagues. Some people spill a little wine for each of the 10 plagues, but however you do it, that your cup is not full, literally, that you're recognizing the sadness of what happened to the Egyptian people who had to suffer. And then a lot of people include, and there are many, many lists and many versions of modern plagues in their own Seders. And certainly, I'm sure many of you have seen this too. Almost everywhere I read we're in the midst of our own plague here right now as we are entering into Passover. So I'm sure many people this year will be adding the coronavirus as one of their modern plagues, one of the 10 or maybe an 11th plague, and acknowledging that. Then after the plagues, we change when we sing a song that is very well liked by many people called Dayenu. And Dayenu means it would have been enough. And it shows gratitude for all of the multiple things that God did for the Israelites, and each step would have been enough. If you had freed us from Egypt, that would have been enough. If you had given us the 10 Commandments, that would have been enough. If you had given us this, that would have been enough. Going through all the wonderful gifts that God has done for the Jewish people. And it's very festive. And after kind of one of the longer sections, longer parts of the Seder, I think a lot of people look forward to this opportunity just to sing and have a lot of fun with the Dayenu. Many people just sing a couple of verses of it, and they sing the refrain a few times. And then the Magi section ends with the second glass of wine or grape juice. And again, we recite the prayer, traditionally the prayer over the wine. And this time, there's no longer version. The whole version of it is right here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Blessed are you, Holy One, our God, ruler of time and space, creator of the fruit of the vine, who awakens us to the blessings of the moment, which is a beautiful creative version that I hadn't read before.
Thank you.
And so we recite the blessing over the wine. Again, we can lean to the left, take a sip of the wine.
So now we get to wash our hands and say the blessing because we are about to have our meal. So that is rachza. And then we say two blessings. One is the motzi over the bread, but we're not eating leavened bread. We're just eating the matzah bread, but it's still wheat from the earth. So we're saying that blessing, and then also the blessing over the first time we're eating matzah. Those blessings are here. And I also like this little Mrs. Maisel matzah holder that I found on Etsy, and I had to share that because it's so cute.
And I'll just add to what Malka was saying, that what's interesting is of the two blessings, one is the regular motzi that we would say over bread. Some people say it every day. Some people say it Friday night for Shabbat. The other is specifically, as she said, for being commanded to eat the matzah. We are only commanded to eat the matzah at the Seder. So we only say that blessing at the Seder. The other, traditionally, if you're eating matzah, you would say it whenever you say it. If you like to say blessings a lot, it's always appropriate for eating matzah. But there's only, we think about you have to eat matzah on Passover. Traditionally, you have to eat matzah at a Seder. You just can't eat bread during Passover.
Right. And it doesn't even have to be that much matzah for it to be kosher, if you care about that piece.
Sorry, someone just came in. I'm trying to admit them. Okay. Now we get to the maror, the bitter herbs. And this is the point at the Seder where we eat the bitter herbs, which represent the bitterness of slavery. And I always found this ironic. We eat the bitter part dipped in the charoset, which is sweet, which always seemed counterintuitive. But as Malka mentioned back in the beginning, the charoset is this. There are lots of ways to make it. It's often a fruit and nut spread that symbolizes the mortar that the Israelite slave used in the bricks and the buildings for Pharaoh while they were slaves. And so what we do at the Seder is we dip the maror in the charoset, and then we say the blessing for God who commanded us to eat the maror, who commanded us to eat the bitter herb.
And then we'd have the korech, which is the Hillel sandwich, where we get to have maror, which is the bitter herbs, and the charoset in between two pieces of matzah, which is quite delicious. And next we have our meal. So this is a picture actually from my Passover Seder a few years ago. This is the fun part. You get to have your meal together and just enjoy each other's company. There's different ways you can decorate your table to make it fun. If it's just you or a couple of people in your house, still have fun decorating that table. Because again, how do we make this a holy moment and not just another dinner? And this is also when a lot of people hide the afikomen.
And speaking of the afikomen, so after we've had our wonderful dinner, that is the opportunity to finish everything off. Afikomen comes from the Greek word for dessert, and it's supposed to be the last thing that we eat is a piece of the afikomen. So you pass it around, and everyone has a little piece, or maybe this year, I don't know if you pass it around, but somehow arrange for everyone to have a little piece of the afikomen. Then we come to our third cup of wine. Again, we say the blessing over the wine, the short version, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And then we get to, to Baruch. So, okay, so sorry, I did the third cup of wine before that. Before we do the third cup of wine, it's traditional to say the Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after the meals. It's quite long. It's many paragraphs. Some people recite the whole Birkat Hamazon, which is wonderful. And some people do shorter versions, which is wonderful. Some people make up their own blessings. Malka included here as an option, as she said, you can't get really any shorter than these 6 words. Baruch atah Adonai hazan et hakol. We praise you, Adonai, who gives food to everyone. So if you want to kind of acknowledge and do the blessing, it's something you can say without reciting the entire blessing. Then, after that, then you actually have the 3rd cup of wine, which you say the blessing. Again, tradition is to lean to the left as you're drinking. And then after that, we get to Elijah's cup. And for those who like to do it, to Miriam's cup. So traditionally, Elijah's cup has always been part of the Passover Seder. And the prophet Elijah, we're told, never died. He actually went up to heaven in a chariot of fire, and he's kind of come back, according to Jewish tradition, to announce the coming of the Messiah. So there's this idea on Passover that we're celebrating the past redemption of the Exodus from Egypt, and then with Elijah's cup, we're celebrating the future redemption of the coming of the Messiah. So you put in Elijah's cup on the table, which is filled with wine. And people have different traditions. Sometimes it's just filled with wine before you start the Seder. Sometimes people, their family will go pass it around and everyone will put a little bit of wine in it, and they do it themselves. And then you open the door for Elijah. And I know my family would always look to see, did he come and drink any of the wine? We want to know if he was there. And I guess we didn't see him, but he would have drank a little bit of wine. And there's a wonderful modern custom of welcoming not just Elijah, but Miriam as well. This is a newer ritual idea, part of the Seder. And Miriam is Moses' sister, and she helped to lead the Israelites when they were wandering in the wilderness. And there's this absolutely beautiful story that Miriam had this well that followed her wherever she went. So as long as she was living, there was this well of water that would follow the Israelites throughout the wilderness and sustain them. So the tradition is to have this cup full of water, really reminding us that something we might not know otherwise in the Seder, that women also played a role in the redemption, and that they also, not just today, but even back then had an important role in our people's history. And I know at my Seder, we like to pass around the Miriam's cup at the beginning of the Seder, and everyone puts in a little bit of water, and then we put it in the middle of our table.
Also, one thing to add, which is very cheesy, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, is I saw someone post the other day that we don't want Elijah to be coming into our homes this year because obviously he's going to everyone's homes and that's not social distancing. But anyway, there's a lot of really bad Passover jokes. That's one of them. You're welcome. So next is Hallel. So Hallel is a set of psalms that we sing the beginning of the new month at different Jewish holidays. And so this is another time that we sing these psalms. Honestly, and I just have to share this from my own experience with our own Passover Seder growing up and lots of Passover Seders that I've attended over the years. After dinner, a lot of times none of these things happen. So if they don't happen, it's okay. Or if you just read one of the Psalms or sing one, that's okay too. But it's just interesting that a lot of times after the meal, everyone's like, I'm too tired, I want to do this. And that's totally fine. And if you want to do it, it's also wonderful. So that's one piece. Then we have the 4th cup of wine. And then Nirtzah is asking God to accept our Seder. So traditionally, a lot of people say next year in Jerusalem. Some people feel like that's not where they want to be next year, so they share another place. And this year I've heard people say next year in person. So we wanted to share that. The rest of what we have on here is sometimes people like to just sing some silly Passover songs, either as part of their Seder, at the end of their Seder. I found a whole bunch that I'd never seen before after doing a lot of research. These are pretty fun. My wife and I practiced singing them the other day before bed. So they are just, this woman, Barbara, wrote like a bazillion songs. If you just look her up online, you're going to find she has pages and pages of Disney songs and musicals and just all different kinds of Passover songs. So I'm going to stop our share there. And before we continue, I'm going to ask if you are comfortable to either have your video on, if you're comfortable for a little screenshot photo of everyone who's on today. If you're not comfortable, you can just turn off your video for a moment. That's okay too. But we have been asked to take a little group photo for our funders to see that this is what we're doing.
Actually,
now I'm seeing everyone's faces. It's so nice.
I'm not sure if we could do that. I got everyone's name. Is there a way to take everyone's picture?
Yep. I'm about to do it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, ready? Everyone smile. And just look at your camera, not at your picture. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Oh, it's so nice to see everybody. So that's the end of our little guide that we're sharing with you. And so the rest of our time we can use for questions or comments or things that people want to share. Thanks for the thumbs up. You can take yourselves off of mute now if you want to share or ask questions.
Nancy.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much. Did you say, one of you, that it was sent, this was sent to us in an email earlier?
It was sent earlier today. If you didn't get it, if you just want to give us your email address, we can resend it to you. But it was sent with the link for Zoom today.
Ah, okay. I did get an email from 18Doors, and it just says, we hope you'll join us tonight, but I don't think that was it. I think this was...
No, it came from me.
Okay.
So if you didn't get an email from me, first check your junk email.
I usually do. All right, thanks.
Some of our stuff lands in junk, and then, yeah, if you didn't get it, just let us know and we'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions or comments or things that you want to share, or just like, how can we do this kind of ritual, or here's an idea we have for a ritual this year?
So can I ask what people, and certainly don't feel pressure to respond, but if anyone wants to respond, what you think you might be doing for Seder this year, if you have any plans?
Hi, this is Ariel. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ah, okay. Hi, Malka.
Hi,
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
We are going to do just the family, but we're going to connect with 2 other families on Zoom. So we're going to share and we'll see. That's going to be interesting. One of them is more traditional and the others are like Philly hipsters, if you know what they are. So, so that's going to be kind of funny. I did have I guess, one question and one share. The share is that, I guess, in terms of the afikoman, what I was told and what I've done, you know, since I was a kid, was that the kids are actually hiding the afikoman, not the parents. And then the parents are unable to continue with the Seder unless they have the matzah. So the kids haggle with the parents, demanding money or gifts if the parents are unable to find it.
I've definitely heard that tradition before. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess, and the question is, if you are unable to eat some of the traditional food on the plate, what do you do?
I love that question. I actually, years ago, this hasn't happened yet, and now I just had a baby, so it probably won't happen anytime soon. I've wanted to create a Passover Seder that's not about food, because I think that's an issue for many people, that either they have allergies or just different issues of many reasons why they can't eat different items. So you can either just skip that item. I don't know, someday when I create this Passover Seder, it won't have any food. It'll be like smells or different experiential ways of connecting. I see some singing.
Okay.
So yeah, I think this is where you get very creative, right? So if it's like maror, you can't have it because it's too spicy, or there's a reason why you can't have it, and you just smell it. I mean, that's a really strong smell, right? Or for the charoset, right? If you can't eat the charoset, you know, what's going to represent the pyramids or slavery for you? Like, what kind of an experience? So maybe it's a physical movement, maybe it's telling a story. You know, you get to be so creative with Passover. And I'd love to hear what people come up with, if they come up with different alternative things. But someday I'm going to create the like no food Passover Seder experience.
Okay, thank you, Malka.
Yeah. I don't know if Robyn, if you have anything to add to that, or if anyone else has anything to add to that.
No, I would just say, if there's something you can't eat, don't eat it.
I actually was going to chime in there. I am sort of in a similar boat where myself and my household members, a couple of us have had recent sort of food allergy diagnoses. So we're actually planning in part from like Pinterest. And then I came across, I'm not sure what your allergies or restrictions may be, but we came across a paleo style cookbook called The New Yiddish Kitchen. So we're actually planning to cook out of that, since that has a lot of more allergy friendly recipes for all sorts of like more traditional Jewish dishes. But for example, we're going to be trying a matzah made out of yucca. So, and I think most of our food will be kind of catering towards some allergy friendliness. So happy to report back afterwards about how it goes.
That's cool. I actually just saw someone on the other end post a picture from Target the other day. So where they would have Passover food, they had a box of, I think, gluten-free matzah-like crackers. So like, it was not matzah. It was not kosher for Passover. It was crackers that looked like matzah in the kosher section. So, you get to be creative, whatever works for you.
Yeah, we'll definitely be being creative this year, especially.
Yes.
So I had a quick question. This will be my first time hosting a Seder dinner for my fiance and myself. Actually, just to be honest, my first Seder dinner ever without my grandparents.